She's so excited. Should be.
Call to order the work session. Director Hart will be talking about, you pronounce it for me because I already screwed up.
Psilocybin.
Psilocybin. Thank you. If you would.
Well, good evening, everybody. We are here to talk about the wonderful world of mushrooms and what they do. So we have been put together for the state of Oregon, Measure 109, which was passed in 2020. That measure authorized the manufacturing and administration of psilocybin within the state. And so as part of that measure, it has put a responsibility on cities to decide whether or not they would like to allow those types of land use activities to occur. So we are here to talk about how the city would like to proceed. In 2022, we adopted a 2-year moratorium on making a decision for this issue. So we have that moratorium in place until November of 2024. But we're bringing it forward to you now to give us enough time to put together any information and ordinances we need to do so before we hit that end of the moratorium. So today we'll talk about a bit of the background, which I've already started. We'll do an overview of the state's regulations of what they have adopted, the implications for the city, and then what the options would be before council. So for psilocybin, it is still a class 1 narcotic at the federal level, but through Measure 109, it has been authorized for use in the state of Oregon. For some reference in terms of where we stand at the state versus Lebanon level, Measure 109 was passed with 55.75% of the vote. Lynn County voted against it at almost the exact same rate. At Lebanon, it was a bit closer at 51.71% of the vote with only a 363 vote differential. But the vote was to ban psilocybin or to not pass Measure 109. So as part of the moratorium, council gave staff the direction to come back and tell us what the state's requirements are once they actually adopted it. So here we go. As part of the state framework, there are a total of 3 different facilities that can have psilocybin and process psilocybin. You have manufacturing facilities. Those are the facilities that can either grow the product, take the product and extract the psilocine out of it, or also take the psilocine and manufacture edibles and other food products with that psilocine in it. You have laboratories, which is a state required facility where all of the manufactured product must go to a laboratory for appropriate testing to determine potency, to determine that it hasn't been adulterated and that it meets the guidelines of the Oregon Health Authority. And then the laboratories send that product back to the manufacturers. And then you have the service centers, and these are the only facilities that are legally authorized to administer psilocybin to an actual of the state. And that facility has to do so in a licensed manner, in a controlled environment per OHA standards, which we will go through. It is still new. Licensing started in January of this year. It is a new licensing program, so OHA has been taking their time, which means that we still only have a few facilities that have actually started to operate. So you do have 3 manufacturer facilities that are operating and a total of 7 service centers that have been permitted to actually start administering psilocybin. To do this, you have to have licenses. So you have the facilities, and every facility needs to have a license. You have 3 different types of facility licenses. And then on top of that, for service centers, you have the facilitator license. That is the person who is responsible for walking the patron or the individual through the process of the psilocybin administration and the pre-administration and post process. And then there's also the requirement that all individuals that would come into contact with psilocybin or have access to the restricted areas of facilities, they're also required to get worker permits. And everybody that has to get the license has to go through the state required background check. So to go over each of the different facilities in a bit more details and what their regulations are. For manufacturers, there are 3 different types of what they call endorsements. These are the 3 different types of manufacturing processes associated with psilocybin. A facility can have multiple endorsements or a single one. So you could have a grow, you could have the more manufactured or medical type facility, laboratory that goes through the process of taking the product and extracting the psilocine from it. Or you can have more of a restaurant kitchen type facility that is taking the psilocine and turning it into a food product for digestion. So there's 3 different types of manufacturing facilities. It could all happen within one, or it can be separate facility endorsements as well. There are requirements on manufacturers in terms of the maximum amount of product that can be in place at one time. So this is 200 grams of the psilocybin can be stored on site. I have tried to look up what 200 grams looks like. I don't know. It's not truckloads, but it's also not a small bag. It's somewhere in between that. But it's 200 grams maximum that can be stored on site. Per all of the guidelines within the OHA rules, they have to be stored in a very specific manner. They have to be stored within a locked facility or a safe. That safe needs to be within a restricted access area, and the facility needs to be secure and have security cameras with the ability to observe people going in and out of the facility and in and out of the restricted areas. So they do have security requirements that are already stipulated within the Oregon administrative rules. There are specific logging requirements for these products. It is very similar to the marijuana industry. You have to be able to log the product, how much is there, where it goes, when it comes back to your facility after testing, who you sell it to, and how much. And then you also have to be responsible to log the product that is destroyed, because some of the product turns out to be unusable. So you have to log every single bit of it that is then audited at the state level. Manufacturers specifically have a requirement. The only people that they can sell their product to is service centers. So right now there's 7 buyers of their product, and that's it. As the state continues to permit, there will be more, but they're not able to sell it to any other type of facility. They're not able to sell it to a marijuana dispensary. It is restricted to just service centers. There's also rules that they cannot alter the product. They can't add anything to it or change the chemical composition to make it more potent. Or mix it with an alcoholic product or a cannabis product. It has to maintain its natural course so that it is truly the use in which it's been authorized for. And then because you do have part of the manufacturing that could be a restaurant style kitchen, it specifically says that you can't operate in a facility that also serves regular food to the public so that you don't have cross-contamination. So those are the rules for manufacturing. That is an overview. There's about 20 pages worth of rules within the ORAs associated with manufacturers. This is just sort of a snapshot of the general rules. For service centers, they have requirements in terms of how the facility is set up. You have to have, again, secured facilities for where you are storing the product. You have to log the product that you receive. log the product that you administer, also log the product that you destroy due to unuse. This is the facility that you will actually have individuals taking psilocybin and having it administered to them. And so the state has put together a licensing process for facilitators, which has over 120 hours of education that is required. There is a caveat that if there are people who have certain education or experience in their background, that can be reduced. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a full 120 hours. But that is at the stipulation of the state of what they would accept for a reduction of hours of training. As part of that training, it is to teach facilitators about patients' bill of rights. It is to identify how to work with patients under I guess the best way to put it is under the influence of psilocybin as they're being administered, and then walking them through the state protocols in terms of what they're legally required to do. For a facilitator, for a patient to come in, or a patron to come in, before they can ever have psilocybin administered, they are required to go through a preparation session. That preparation session includes a couple of legally required documents, which is a safety and support plan. So the facilitator will walk the patient through what they could potentially expect while on psilocybin, had the duration of how long they could expect, the facility and room in which they will be in, and the different options of how it would be administered to them. And then also the patient has an open dialogue with the facilitator as to a support plan, as if something goes in a way in which they're uncomfortable with, how would they like the facilitator to react. It should have emergency contacts, all that kind of stuff. The goal of the safety and support plan is to make sure that it is an environment in which the facilitator has a procedure to go through that is authorized by the person taking the psilocybin. They also have the emergency contacts to make sure that they have people to contact in case something is not going to plan. After the administration of the psilocybin, they also have a requirement of a safe transportation plan. Per state law, you are not legally allowed to drive yourself away from the facility, not allowed to drive, bicycle, skateboard, pretty much anything that's motorized or can harm yourself. You have to have a transportation plan where somebody is going to pick you up. And then if that plan is not followed, the service center and facilitator have to have a plan in place as to how they will address that, inclusive of calling local police officers to come and assist. So all of that needs to be prepped and discussed before the administration and before the administration session. And so usually it's done before the day that it's scheduled. Next, the patient would come in, have the administration session with the facilitator. On average, depending on the potency that is provided, it takes about 2 to 6 hours. They follow the safe transportation plan, they go home, the transaction is completed. There are a couple of interesting things that they do allow within the OARs. You can do group sessions for the administration of psilocybin, and it does also provide the option to do outdoor sessions if the outdoor facility meets the requirements of the OARs. So basically it has to be within an enclosed patio, a fully secured site, where the only access to it would be back through the service center facility, that kind of thing. And again, for manufacturers, you can have 200 grams of product on site. For service centers, you can have 100 grams of product on site. And it still has all the same logging requirements. We've kind of gone through some security items already, but you have to have the established limited access areas where everything is being stored and logged. You land. You can't have one that would overlap anywhere that has cannabis sales, anywhere that has liquor sales on or off site, so liquor stores or restaurants that have alcohol sales. It can't be adjacent to or overlapping with healthcare facilities, restaurants, or residences. So for example, in the downtown, we have a storefront that's commercial and residence up top because it's overlapping and in the same building. That storefront would not be eligible for a service center or manufacturer. You also can't have it in anywhere that is exclusively zoned residential within city limits. So our residential mixed density, low density, and high density zones are ineligible, and you can't be within 1,000 feet of schools, basically. So where does that leave us in terms of what it means on city implications? Basically, this is a generalization. I have not done a map that identifies exactly where, based off of the zoning, we could put together a GIS map if that is at the request of council. But generally speaking, where manufacturers and service centers would be eligible under state law is largely along the highway commercial zone, which is also inclusive of downtown, the downtown corridor. It would be mostly allowed within the industrial zones. There is one school up towards the north that is adjacent to some industrial that would have an overlap that would negate some of the properties. And then you also have the Mill Race project, which is not exclusively zoned residential, although most of it is residential right now. It's a mixed use zone, which means that that would also be a spot that it would be eligible for use. As part of this initial research, we did reach out to the fire district and the police department to do a review. The fire district identified, and I believe we included their email that they had, fire district identified basic non-concern on the service center side from a fire perspective. From a manufacturer's perspective, the process of extracting the silicene from the mushroom requires chemicals, heat, and pressure, which is a combination that fire districts don't like to see. So they have concerns regarding the manufacturer's facilities. And so they didn't put together an explicit request to have council deny them, but they did identify the options in front of us. Does anybody have any additional questions on the framework? I can do my best to try to answer it.
I have a question, but I'm not sure anybody knows the answer to this. Doesn't sound like it. 200 grams of this stuff sitting there. I don't know what a dose is. What, I don't, like you said, you don't know how big that is. What effect can that have? Obviously, this is something that I would imagine you could overdose on or have a bad trip or whatever it is. Do we know what a normal dosage is?
I'm not an expert on dosing. I can talk about permitting and where they can go.
I get it. I just was
And
wondering
that
if you
kind
know.
of thing. I do know within the OARs, it identifies amount of dosing that can occur. I can try to look through as we
I
go
know.
on to see. But I know that it is identified within the OARs of what's authorized.
So they can administer this through, if I'm understanding correctly, 3 different means. So edibles. So they go to the service center, they can have edibles if they want, or extract. Apparently they would drop it on their tongue or on food or something.
Mhm.
And then actually just the old school mushroom.
Yep.
Okay. Let me talk about let me dig into this service center for just a second. So I fully understand this. So someone would come in and are they identified as is it almost like a medical marijuana card?
So there is no restriction on who can, other than.
Okay, so I could be walking down the street and go, I want to take some mushrooms tonight.
So I think there's an age limit of 21. I'm pretty sure. So there's an age limit of 21. Beyond that, it's not a medical, it's not something that's prescribed by a doctor. It is authorized for anybody over the age of 21 to participate.
Okay.
To participate in, you have to go through the preparation session, go through the whole putting all the documentation together. And then it's not that you can do it the same day. From reading through it, it is done at least 24 hours in advance. And then you go and do the session.
Okay. And then the sessions last
2 to 6 hours
2
is
to
what
6
they
hours, depending
anticipate
on
the
the
average.
potency of the product. Okay. So they stay in that service center the whole time.
Correct. That is the requirement. I will say, and I think I listed it out in the staff report, there is specific language that says that you can't keep somebody there against their will. So it is the requirement for them to be there. It is their agreement that they will be there, but you cannot lock them in and close them in and not unlock the door until such time as they're done.
Okay, because it says that you can't lock them in there, so.
Correct.
But there's no control measures. So what's the control measures after, say someone comes in, does it, after an hour goes, I'm out of here. Is there a control measure, is there going to be one in place where they're not allowed to go back there?
So the control measure through the safety and support plan and the safe transportation plan is outlined of if you act in a certain manner or if something goes wrong, this is how you want us to address it. And the patron is giving the authorization of certain actions. If they choose to leave the facility where the facilitator is identifying them as still under the influence, the facilitator has a legal requirement to contact the police department.
Okay, so, okay. The other question I had on the 15% tax, how much does the cities get?
No clue.
Zero? So it goes all to administration in Salem?
I have no idea where the taxation goes. I just know we as a city cannot tax
can't
anything
add more
above
taxes,
what the 15%
But we don't,
is.
we have no idea how they allocate that 15%.
No idea.
How do they do marijuana?
Also no clue.
What's that?
We do get a
Any-
percentage of the marijuana
Does anybody know
tax.
the exact percent?
I know isn't it identified in the budget at some place? I'm almost
Yeah.
positive, but
It used to be, I don't remember the exact percentage. We used to get a nice percentage of that, but now all that since Measure 110 passed, all goes, I think a very
Oh.
large majority of it goes to
mental health.
rehabilitation centers and such. So the city gets, I don't even know what it's very,
So,
very,
so our requirements for,
yeah.
our requirements for providing services, possible services, isn't really offset by new tax income. Is that
No.
a fair statement?
I would have to clarify how much of the 15% would be filtered down to communities that authorize it. I would have to do that additional research, but
Okay.
what of the 15% comes, it's not going to pay for an additional police officer.
Yeah, okay.
About licensing fees.
Where marijuana did. for a while.
Licensing fees are issued at the state. They're not issued with the organization that issues the licenses.
So that brings me to another question. If liquor licenses go through us through consent calendars, usually, is this same process? Or is it just forced right down our throat?
So there is, if we authorize it, there is a land use compatibility that we need to sign off on. And that is the licensing requirement at the city level that we would have to do for signing off on the permits. I would have to double check the process of if we would have to authorize it like OLCC or not, but we do have to do that compatibility study, statements. Trey's going to look up the website right now.
Have we,
Yeah, I think so.
okay, so shifting gears again, I had all these questions in my head as you were talking. So have we been able to tour a service center is there one in business right now?
There's one in Albany.
Okay, Have we been able to-
There's two in Portland. I'd have to go back.
as an elected official, am I able to go over there and tour it?
I'm.
You know?
You can even learn more about the grants and how much it's.
So there we go. There's one in Albany, Eugene, Hood River, Portland, Ashland has two, and one in Bend.
Has staff went to any of these type of locations, the manufacturing, the laboratories, or the service centers?
I haven't toured any. I don't
Okay.
know if they're very new. Albany's service center just opened up a few weeks ago, from my understanding. They are private facilities, so to tour them, we would have to request approval of the private facility to do a tour of them.
So are they similar to a contractor for liquor?
I would imagine so.
Aren't the liquor stores contractors? They're a business, but they're contractors through the state. Is that a correct statement or not?
OLCC is the agency which purchases liquor, and then it is distributed through the liquor stores through their contracting of the product. This one,
So they are contractors.
so for psilocybin, it is, they're manufacturing the product. For liquor stores, they're having the product distributed to them. It's a bit different.
I'm just curious, are they similar entities in that I guess they're not, because we could have multiple service centers in Lebanon, can't we? Unlike liquor stores, we can only have one.
In terms of the OAR rules, there is no separation or limit of number of service centers per capita or distance or anything like that. There is, it's more on the equivalency of a marijuana dispensary,
Okay.
I
It's what the
think.
market will bear.
It's what the market will bear.
And by the way, 200 grams is just shy of a half a pound.
Okay. So
I'm not sure if it's like a dust or a oil or a,
Huh?
I don't know what the concentration of that is. If it's dusty, it could be this big. I don't know if it's, I don't know.
It,
So Trey, you were going to
Totally.
say something, I'm sorry.
Totally foreign to me.
Well, I was just going to respond to the OLCC oversight of the liquor. I was just confused by the contractor term. I think in
Oh, okay.
Oregon, they have to buy the alcohol through the state,
Yes.
Yeah.
if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yes.
So in that sense, they have to contract with the state to buy the alcohol,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't be considered a contractor as I use that term,
okay,
like an
okay.
independent contractor or something like that.
Right.
So I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So have you mentioned that we haven't done what you called it, what map?
It's a separation map
Okay.
or a bubble map to say this is
I'll
a
tell you,
radius around.
I'll tell you right now, I would really like to see that. And the reason why is the time, place, and manner of the homeless issue we just dealt with. It really, after it was said and done, we've seen that, oh, there is only 2 spots. I kind of want to know in advance how many places they can go with a service center. I know the laboratories you can't, time, place, and manner.
No,
Manufacturing,
manufacturing you can.
is manufacturing mostly indoors?
Manufacturing must be 100% indoors.
Okay, so it's like other mushroom operations, edible mushrooms in the area, okay. Yeah, I would love to see that map, because with the overlaps and everything, I'm trying to think of where they could put them. It'd be in the Bi-Mart, or the Bi-Mart Mall and downtown.
Under the current rules, that's generally, pretty much along the Highway 20 corridor in the industrial zones, in the mill race development. Yes, that's generally speaking where you're going to see it, because you're fully restricting out any of the residential areas. You're limiting out the areas that's 1,000 feet around schools.
Mhm.
That pretty much leaves your commercial corridor and your industrial areas, but I'd be happy to have our GIS department put together a map.
And then my last question, Jeremy, then I'll let you have the floor. The, never being around this, okay, what does someone do on this? Do they just sit there in their chair and look at the ceiling, or what is the effects of it?
It is different for each patient. Just like with any narcotic, it is different for each person who takes it. Some people sit there quietly and don't do anything. Some people run around in circles because they have a bunch of energy. Some people are the happiest people on the planet. It is different for every single biological being. That is why they have set up the system in place to where you have to do it within it is a product that lasts long enough for a long enough period of time where they don't want to provide it to the general public like a marijuana dispensary.
Okay.
It has to be done within a service center. You have to do it in a manner in which you understand you're there for the duration in which you are under the influence of the product, and you have those protocols in place. Are you ever going to get to a point in where the system is going to ensure that there's no problems? No. The system as designed sets it up to where it's under OHA's best case scenario understanding of we think this is going to be an appropriate control. And then you have the police department and services as the backup to address anything that does get out of hand.
Okay.
It is technically a psychedelic drug, right?
It's a class 1 narcotic, yeah.
Jeremy?
Yeah,
Jeremy, do you have
I have
something?
a question on the facilitator part of this. I remember when this was on the ballot, my understanding, I don't know if I was reading in between the lines, but that this is, the big push was that this is to treat PTSD and this was a helpful agent in the treatment of that. And like I said, I could have been reading in between the lines, but I thought this is going to be administered by a licensed therapist or psychologist. And it looks like, reading the OARs, that I could go take the 120-hour course and be certified to treat these people with PTSD with psychedelic.
That's
Correct.
exactly my concern.
uh,
We're talking about people that have mental health issues.
Right.
They're looking for this to help them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to trust in this day and age, the mental health of someone to someone that has a high school diploma or GED, 120 hours of online training and took the test as many times as I had to get 70%.
I was just about to say that.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm gonna trust that they're gonna be good for mental health workers.
Right. I mean, you think about the
Yeah.
amount of training a psychologist or a
Therapist.
licensed therapist has for treating PTSD.
Mhm.
And this just seems like it's like, I understand if maybe that was an adjunct in their treatment of PTSD, but this just seems like a spot where people can go get high on shrooms. And
correct.
I don't understand what type of, I guess, what type of treatment I could provide for the PTSD other than if I've taken this 120-hour course. Is probably mainly just to deal with safely administering this and nothing to do with the mental health part of this.
Correct.
So I don't, am I interpreting all that right?
The 120 hours as laid out in the OARs, it teaches you about the history of the product. It teaches you about the potential experiences that individuals will have while under the influence of it. And it teaches you the process in which you are supposed to go through while you are facilitating it. It does not identify that you are going to solve somebody's PTSD. It is simply saying that you have now identified how you are going to administer it. It's not coaching them through it. It's not helping them through their mental health problems. The psilocybin mushroom itself is the identified agent to try to address those underlying mental health issues. The facilitator is educated on how to administer it.
So it's a safe place to do
A
psilocybin,
safe place.
hopefully, right?
That's the goal based off of the way that it's written.
So someone who's got underlying issues beyond just PTSD, it could actually exacerbate it.
Very well could.
And they're obviously well-trained in those 120 hours to take care of those problems. So now we need Frank's guys because someone's just gone off the deep end.
Could be.
Yeah.
Is there measurements on intoxication of this? When someone's intoxicated on this project or product, is there any way of measuring that intoxication?
Mm-mm.
So it's just,
No
they could
breathalyzer.
lose all faculties and run around in the street.
Well, they could lose all faculties and then the facilitator will do the best that they can to follow the safety and support plan that is legally required for them to do. And then if they cannot stop the person from their desire to leave, then they call the police services.
So, hey, Chief, this question's directed towards you. So when we have someone that we come across on the street that's totally intoxicated, where do you take them?
Hospital.
What does the hospital want? Do they want them?
No.
Exactly. That's the reason I asked you, because I already knew the answer. So it's going to be a similar, this is going to just be a similar issue.
Mhm.
I don't know how that's beneficial to Lebanon,
Well, so,
I don't
But
believe,
that-
it.
but that-
I don't believe it is.
but that's just me.
yeah. So
You know, I've talked to friends of mine back east that have been part of some VA studies on this. And they're done in a completely controlled environment with licensed psychotherapists or psychiatrists and that sort of thing. And even then, the results are mixed. Because you never know if it's going to make
option, so voter referral. Or the city can say, hey, this sounds like a great idea, but we're going to add some additional sidebars to it and do a time, place, and manner ordinance. At which point in time, we would have a bit of a further discussion of what are some of the things that you'd want us to look at. We would work with the planning commission and bring you back an ordinance for consideration. And then the last option is, yes, refer it to voters for the opt-out and to prohibit it, but just in case, do you want us to also pursue a time, place, and manner ordinance? If it does pass by the voters, we would have our rules and sideboards in place.
So the opt-out option there is just strictly for service centers. Is that
It's
correct?
for service centers and manufacturers.
Manufacturing,
or
but
one
never
or the other.
laboratories.
No laboratories.
Okay.
My feelings on this are, 2 years ago when we referred it to voters, we were operating that we don't have enough data. The rules weren't in place. We weren't really sure what this is doing. I think we're still at that point. There's rules now, and I don't know, it's a little underwhelming what they've actually set up compared to what I thought it was going to be.
Mhm.
And we have Albany and Salem have facilities that are new, it sounds like. We don't have any, I guess, good examples of how this is going to work long-term. So I
no
would be in
data.
favor of referring it for an opt-out again. Just
I
until,
would
until we
agree.
can see like where this actually goes and what the positives and negatives are, we could actually hear some information from Albany, Salem, and Ashland, if it's working out in their town.
I agree. Sample size is way too small.
Yeah,
So much we don't know about
exactly.
it.
I agree also. We can always revisit and authorize down the road should good data come out.
We
Refer
would-
it to the voters to approve it again, couldn't we?
I think it would have to be a referral to the voters
Yeah,
to allow it
referral
at
to the
that
voters,
point.
but-
Yeah.
So it's not like this is a forever, ever. But I would agree with the other counselors that I don't think we have a sample size on the data that is appropriate to work with. And as Jeremy said, I'm fairly underwhelmed by the rules that the state has come up with for the safe administration of this. When I was on the street, I ran into people doing psilocybin, the old magic mushrooms, and there is no way to tell how intoxicated they are. They'll know they're intoxicated, but there's no way to verify what it is. I mean, I can watch anybody's eyeballs bounce, but I think there's just too many unanswered questions at this point.
Well, I know for me, 2 years ago, I was pretty passionate about making sure we at least did a 2-year moratorium on it for the same reasons everyone's laid out tonight. I'm happy to again refer it to voters for the opt-out for both of them. I did email the state just to see if there was like, how many are in the pipeline? I mentioned that to Kelly in an email just to see, is there a whole deluge of them coming down or not? I haven't had a response, but just because there's the 7 only right now, my thinking on that hasn't changed, that we just don't have enough data to know how this could affect us. I also am really interested in the point that the mayor hit on, which is it's a lot of risk and not a lot of reward too, quite honestly. Unlike marijuana tax or, alcohol, there's no sin tax attached to it, so to speak. I know it's supposed to be for therapeutic uses, but it's still a drug. So that also gives me pause.
I'll be totally honest with the manufacturing and the laboratory. I could see that possibly happening. Okay, it's not, but my opinion about it is not because I'm anti this or anti that. I'm just thinking of, what's the city get for adding a bunch of additional issues to our city that we're already, shorthanded as, right now. So the service centers trouble me. They really do. They trouble me because if we look at American history, we've already had things like this in the Old West. They're called opium dens. And I don't see them around anymore. There's a reason why we got rid of them. To me, it just seems like the same thing, and they're putting a big bow on it, saying, "Oh, it's safe, and it's this," and I'm sorry, I've been around the block a couple times. I can see issue after issue with them. Someone that just, partakes in this activity, and then all of a sudden just goes, I don't want to be here because the big mouse in the corner told me to go somewhere else. And then it's pushed onto our police department, and then they push it onto the hospital, and the hospital's like, well, we don't want them. We don't have any place for them. So it seems like it's the same issue, just repackaged with a different subject that gets pushed onto small communities like ours. And then we're expected to come up with resources we don't have to help manage the byproducts of these actions. So I'd want to opt out, but I'd also want the city be prepared if it passed by the voters, that we had a time, place, and manner ordinances ready to go if it did pass. So that was my thought as soon as I read this last couple of days. We need to be prepared as a city and have those time, place, and manner in time for us all to examine them and look at them and look at the map, so we don't run into kind of the situation we had with the homeless time, place, and manner. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else?
I agree.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree too.
I think we have a pretty good consensus.
Dave, I didn't hear you say I agree, so I was just wondering. You're thinking about the
It seems
service
like-
centers, all right.
It'd be a pretty hard genie to put back in the bottle if you started this
Exactly, I mean,
without knowing what you're doing.
and then we talk about we don't have enough data, which I agree, that it's a fair statement. But it seems like we have a lot of case study already on unfettered drug use and what it's done to this state. And I'm pretty adamant about that. I make no apologies for my opinion on this, that it has not been good for the state. Okay, like I said, I'm not anti anything, but it hasn't been good for our communities, especially small communities like ours, because we do not have the funding to combat the issues with it, period. Our overall budget's the same as some cities' police budget. But that model that works for those big jurisdictions, I had this discussion with the reporter the other day about the homeless issue. I go, just because that model might work in Portland doesn't mean it's going to work here because of the difference in budgets, resources, period, staff, just money, and I see this as the same thing. It's like, oh, this fits everybody's bill. Well, no, actually it doesn't. It can, measure 110, just, I think has destroyed small communities. And hopefully there's some changes to it in the future. But anyhow, like I said, I'll get off my soapbox.
A couple of things to note too is that, we would not be the only community that put in front of voters. In 2022, it was, Lynn County voted to prohibit it, Brownsville, Harrisburg, Lyons, Mill City, Millersburg, Sweet Home, Tangent, Gates. So to your point, there's clearly maybe a large versus small or smaller city aspect to this where possibly police services could be impacted, and we're a little more nervous about things like that. So I think it's important to note that we're not the only ones that have chosen, that are looking at this route. People took it 2 years ago, so.
There was 107 permanent bans 2 years ago with 32 moratoriums.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments?
Nope.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we'll bring this back to you. Trey's going to take over the opt-out process, and that'll be brought back to you in July of next year. In the meantime, I will put together the GIS map and share that, and we will work with the Planning Commission to put together a time, place, and manner ordinance for consideration before the city council. And the plan would be to bring that back for adoption in September, August and September of next year.
I would just, is it possible to go a little bit earlier on that, just so if we have prolonged conversations about these, we're not running up against a deadline, maybe similar to what we did with the homeless kind of time, place, and manner restrictions? If we could just give us an extra month or two is what I'm asking,
Yep.
requesting.
We can do that too.
Thank you.
I'd be in favor of opt-out, period.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Trey, do you have anything?
Only if is there any comments, thoughts about time, place, manner right now as we start to work into that jumped out at you? Otherwise, we'll just bring something back and you guys can comment on it.
I could be wrong, but from the temperature of the group, the time, place, manner should be pretty restrictive. We're going to do it. I mean, we kind of all agree we don't want it.
Well, I think if, the better way of saying it is if we're forced to do it.
Correct.
So,
What would be some reasonable restrictions?
Well, I mean, I think Kelly's gone through some of them and I'm going to allow her to. She hasn't handed this off to me yet.
So some basic restrictions that we've thought through is to limit the zoning to the highway commercial zone or the industrial zone, to require a conditional use permit. I would also identify that it would be appropriate to do additional separation requirements to, say, child daycare centers, that kind of thing. And then if it is legally authorized, I would also put a separation between facilities of service centers and manufacturers, if that is something that passes the smell test on the legal front. Beyond that, I think if we start trying to get into the nitty gritty of how the facilities operate beyond what OHA is, that starts to put in code enforcement and policing requirements on the city that we probably would have some difficulty actually enforcing. So I would think we would want to stick to, the locations that we would authorize it. I don't know if Trey has anything to add.
I guess the only other caveat I'd have to that is if it was possible, if we were, if the voters, maybe not the best way of saying force, but if the voters approve it, okay, and we have to help manage it as a city, that is it possible to prevent, one service center after another service center, kind of like the marijuana dispensaries are all together. And it's like, can we at least spread them out?
For the separation between facilities concepts, but
Okay.
Trey needs to sign off on that.
Wouldn't it fit?
That was very difficult and we got a little bit of trouble when we were doing that with the marijuana. I was thinking maybe we could, because it's, we could limit it to like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Don't get a lot go in there for that.
At least 6 to noon, because they got to have 2 to 6 hours.
What was the figure for the passage in Lynn County? Or-
Have
It
that up,
was-
actually.
It was voted against in Lynn County by 55.26% of the votes.
Okay.
In Lebanon, it was 51.71.
Yes, correct.
So we got
Good job.
a majority say we don't want it, so,
Yeah. Okay, is there any other questions or comments? If there isn't, we will adjourn this work session so we can get ready for the regular session at 6. So, work session's adjourned.
Great information as usual.
Oh, thank you.
Somebody around here does know what it's like to be on these shrooms that they're not supposed to.
I was thinking that. Wayne's, the age where, like the 60s and stuff, but, it seems like he was pretty straight and narrow back then too, so. Oh, Dave. Let's call to order the regular session. Let's please rise for the flag salute. Will the city recorder please call roll? Present.
Here.
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 We'll move into the consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussions of these items unless the councilor so requests. In this case, the item will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Last month, I didn't read them, but I feel that maybe I should, and it wasn't because of the one word.
Sure.
Agenda, Lebanon City Council Agenda, October 11th, 2023, board meeting, the Planning Commission, July 19th and August 16th of this year, council meeting, September 13, 2023, work session, September 13, 2023, regular session, easement, Seven Oaks Middle School. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Public comments. Citizens may address the council by filling out a testimony card, comment card prior to speaking and handing it to the city recorder. Each citizen is allotted up to 5 minutes to provide comment to council. The council may take an additional 2 minutes to respond. The city recorder will accept and distribute written comments at speaker's request. So first up tonight, Kay Cortez. And remember, when if you're going to take the full 5 minutes, when this little amber light comes on, that means you got a minute left, and the red light means you're out of time.
Well, I do have to apologize because I was going to make you guys something this evening, but I had surgery, so I'll make it on the next meeting. October 11th, 2023, Chief Frank Stevenson, Mayor Ken Jacola, Ron Whitlatch, Jason Rush, and the city council members. I am here to express my gratitude to Ron Whitlatch and Jason for working with me on the journey to improve and make our neighborhood safer. My husband and I have lived in our home for 3.5 years. I began to see a lot of potential in many areas. First was the big hole east of the police department coming off of Highway 34 in Tangent. That got repaired. Thank you, Ron. Then the 25-mile signs on each end of North 2nd and Mullins Drive. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Jason. I contacted Pacific Power and Light Company to replace the street lights from the corner of North 2nd and Mary Street to 5th. They were either dim or not working properly. There was 3 lights to be exact. That did make a difference and hoping to deter the criminal activity. Then I returned on August 9th, advocating not only for myself, but neighbors as well for a 4-way stop. After the meeting, Dave Workman and KJ came to me stating that they would check it out the next day or two. From August to September, the next meeting, I had to anxiously await for the answer. It was a long month for me, as some of you know. In the meantime, part of our intersection got repaired. It looks fabulous. What a wonderful job the city of Lebanon did and Breeze Construction did. Least but not last, I contacted ODOT several months ago about the intersection between the Lebanon Police Department and the Senior Center, about being a blind corner. I not only got hit several times, but others as well that were walking, people on walkers, handicapped scooters, and children crossing. I had 2 meetings with them, and the last update is that they would return in October with the plan to make it a safe place to cross. The suggestion was to reconstruct the curbing and not sure what type of flashing lights would go there. The city of Lebanon has rights to the part of the street, so Ron was very much a part of the project. Thank you. Don't laugh, but I think Ron and Jason were on my speed dial for a long time. Instead of drifting along like a leaf in a river, understand who you are and how you come across to people and what kind of impact you have on people around you and the community around you and the world. So when you go out, you can feel you've made a positive difference. And I'm proud to be a member of the community and a citizen, and I'm blessed in many ways. Thank you.
Welcome, Tim.
Thank you.
And I sent you pictures as well to show you. And Jack, the last picture on there was one of the sidewalks on North Mary Street where I had asked for that to be repaired. And one of the tenants fixed the sidewalk and it looks great because it was dipping pretty bad, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for the fruit for the soup kitchen, by the way. It was great. She brought over a big donation to us.
Oh. Next up is Greg Black. Yeah, Ward 2.
Yeah.
Great. Mr. Black is from Ward 2, sorry.
Okay, be glad that Kay went ahead of me. So I'm kind of irritated tonight, but not at any of you personally. At the last council meeting, there were a couple of easements discussed about rerouting water mains at the ends of South 15th over to 14th and Vine and South 16th to Airway. Today, without notice, a big Kubota track hoe showed up and cleared trees, all the vegetation from 16th to the creek between 15th and 16th, saying that there was a water line going in there. I think they were in the wrong place. That may have been the original plan, but that's not what was, not the final. So that was it.
Okay. Do we have any information on that?
Yes, I learned about this this afternoon, and you are correct. It was in the wrong place. Our crews got the location wrong on the clearing, so apologize for that. They're going to repair the fence tomorrow and get that put back together.
Okay, it looks pretty ugly right now.
Okay, we will clean it up and make sure, for sure. Uh-huh.
Thank you. Tana Nicholson? And there's no word on there. It just says David or Dave.
She's
So-
on my way.
Word 3, okay, or
Hi, Tana.
2, sorry. I'm losing my mind today.
So I'm here for the same reason. At a little bit after 9, I heard a noise that I couldn't figure out what was going on. By 9:28, I could see what was going on and the big orange tractor across the creek. And I kept watching it to see if it was going to come over to Grandma Honey's property. And it just kept coming closer and closer. And I started calling down to, I'm not sure. At City Hall, but I don't know the exact apartment, but you're the one who called me back. But no one returned my phone calls for hours, and I kept calling. I don't know, every half an hour to an hour. And I had already been in City Hall a week ago and the week prior. And I was trying to tell them, hey, the property lines aren't right. Something's wrong with that. And I tried to show them where the true property line of Grandma Honey's property is for a different reason. And then I sometimes this morning, I left voicemails and sometimes I did not. But I did get a phone call back from you first. And thank you for hearing me because That was the complete opposite of what we were being told. And here I'm seeing all this old growth being turned into literally just toothpicks, you guys. It's shaved all the way down to the ground. It is just gone. It is not just underbrush. I've lived there for 50 years. I have walked that fence line my entire life since I was 8 years old. It doesn't, I've never seen the skyline before in my whole life there. And no one would listen except for you. You heard. Thank you. But it just took so long, and I could have stopped it if someone would have just heard me this morning. None of that destruction would have happened. So I know somebody got confused. Did somebody figure that out? Because that isn't right. What happened to Grandma Honey's property? It isn't right that what happened to our neighborhood. And it wasn't right what happened to the thousands of wildlife that live in that old growth and underbrush. So please just somebody check it out, because I tried my best to warn everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Last person I have is Bill Sullivan, Ward 3.
Bill's in my word too. I don't know why 3.
It says 3 on here.
That's fine. Yeah, I know where it is.
Play the tune, you pay the piper. I mentioned this to the chief last time I was here. But if you're caught in the act, seeing as how they have no jail people to take care of it, tend to it on site. And I don't know if they have a contingency fund, but what they could do is get some large amount of 3/8 chain, some padlocks and handcuffs, and cut it 30 to 40 feet and chain them to a tree and leave them. About 3 weeks ago, across from my house, they arrested a man, handcuffed him, took him out of his rig and handcuffed him. And with 45 minutes later, he was back in his car. I have a neighbor to the east of me who are homeless or living on the property and using my side of the fence for garbage, human waste. I've called and had the documented, talked to the neighbor's son for help, and I've gotten nowhere. But I'm tired, and I've told the homeless on the other side of the fence when they throw the garbage on my side that I'm tired of it. And I just as well shut the garbage off in my place and check it on their side. But I noticed in the last 2 or 3 days there on 5th and Carolina that there has been a lot less vehicles parked there and they've been moved. But like I say, I'm sick and tired of being a garbage dump. And if I was younger, I'd pack up and move. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. Just so everybody knows, we are constantly working on solutions for the jail. Actually, Chief and I just met, last week, I think it was, or maybe the week before, but we're constantly talking about that subject and figuring out ways to deal with the homeless epidemic and whatnot. So it is right there. We work on it all the time. And it's both subjects are very difficult to find a good solution, but we're going to continue to try to find them. So
Some of them people that could care less, they don't want a home. I don't know what the circumstances is. I know there's drugs and et cetera going on in that neighborhood.
all right, that concludes public comments. We're going to go into presentation. We have a presentation by Peggy McGuire, Executive Director for Communities Services Consortium. Are they on? Oh, there you are. I thought I seen someone on Zoom and I thought it was someone. I was like, that doesn't look like a Peggy up there, but.
Sure. Okay. Great.
Sounds great. Thank you. Good evening, folks. Thanks for allowing me time on your agenda. I know you have a lot of stuff going on, and I'll try to go through this as quickly as I can. Also, I'm just going to say that because I live in this world of these housing programs, it is really easy for me to know what I'm talking about and get deep down in the weeds, and sometimes very confusing to other folks. And HUD, of course, makes it so much more complicated than it needs to be. So if there's anything that I say that you'd like to ask more questions about, that's really my primary reason for being here tonight, is to be able to, there we go, thank you, to be able to answer any questions you may have, and then hopefully get your support for a resolution that that you have later on your agenda tonight. I'm Peggy McGuire. I'm the Executive Director of Community Services Consortium. We are the state and federally recognized community action agency for Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties. And I'm going to see if I can do this right. Woo-hoo, okay. So what is a continuum of care and why do we need one? It used to be that any entity that wanted to apply for HUD continuum of care funding, which is pretty much any funding that addresses preventing homelessness all the way through responding to people who are homeless, helping them get rehoused, and then helping them have long-term housing and doing affordable development, that you could apply for it. But as time went on and time went on, HUD tried to narrow the process for that happening. And so in the 90s, they required that you be part of a continuum of care. Our area, Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties, are part of a 26 county continuum of care. And that's the rural Oregon continuum of care. And I'm going to talk just a little bit about that in a minute. So I gave you a little list of the kind of the range of folks that usually make up a continuum of care. The purpose of a continuum of care is to be the consolidated applicant for your area, and you get to pick what your area is and how you're going to operate your continuum. You get to name that, but then you register with HUD. And then the idea is also to have anybody and everybody who has a voice and a concern about this issue involved in the planning at the continuum. You can structure the continuum so it is operated by a municipality. You can structure it so it's operated by a community action agency, by a nonprofit. Mid-Willamette Valley recently formed a Marion and Polk continuum of care, and they created their own entity and they hired staff to run that. What I'm proposing that we do is that my agency, CSC, will operate our continuum if we're able to pull out and form this tri-county continuum, if I have support from all the communities. And if that happens, we'll get that going. And then the group itself will decide how they want to move forward. And currently CSC is already providing some essential services that a continuum is required to do. We coordinate the point in time count. We manage a coordinated entry list, which is a list of individuals who've been interviewed. They've filled out a vulnerability assessment to identify kind of their history of homelessness and what makes them vulnerable and why they're living on the streets. And then they're rated and ranked. And theoretically, what happens with that is the most vulnerable people are offered the first available housing to get them off the street. And you work your way through the list. It's not a waiting list because there's never enough housing for everybody, but it's a process for making sure that the most vulnerable are cared for. And we also operate the Homeless Management Information System, which is a data collection and repository that is required by HUD of any continuum. I provided this little chart because every continuum is rated and ranked by the Department of Housing and Urban Development on their performance. So for example, the number of people who are homeless for the first time who are living in your continuum, the job and income growth for homeless people in the area that your continuum covers, the number of people you have homeless. All of these things are reviewed, and then you get a report card for your continuum. And I'm here to tell you the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care is not getting a very good report card. So anytime that applications are put in from anywhere in that 26 counties, then not only is our proposal looked at and given a rating and ranking, but then they apply our report card for the entire continuum. And this is a super competitive process. Half a point can make the difference between getting funding or not. And so as you can imagine, entities like Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco that have high-paid grant writers are doing really well, and the rural Oregon continuum of care, not so well. And I don't see an end to that process. So here's a map of the rural Oregon continuum of care. These are the blue counties here. And what got me really fired up about this whole process was when the governor took office in January and initiated Executive Order 2302 and Executive Order 2303. The handwriting on the wall was very clear to me. Executive Order 2302 identified these gray counties on the map here, which are separate continuums of care, distinct continuums, and associated hundreds of millions of dollars to go to those counties to address homelessness in those communities. No money was associated with Executive Order 2302. Lynn County said, hey, we want to be part of Executive Order 2302. And so the governor agreed we could opt into that, but said, oh yeah, we're not going to give you any of that hundreds of millions of dollars. You get to split the money that the 2303 folks are going to split. And House Bill 5019 allocated $26 million for the rest of the rural Oregon continuum of care. Again, what really fired me up about this is when I looked at those counties that were getting funding, Jackson County, which has a smaller population than our Tri-County region, got $8.8 million directly allocated. Marion and Polk counties got over $10 million. And Lynn County is just getting around $1.9 million. Our entire Tri-County region is getting right around $5 million. And we had to compete for part of that. So if you heard me on the news saying bad things about the governor, I apologize if I offended you, but I don't apologize for what I said. Rural communities are getting short shrift and I'm tired of it. So how is this connected to everything that we're doing in Lynn County right now? Right now, CSC operates the Homeless Engagement and Resource Team, which is a group of volunteers that are working on issues around homelessness for Lynn County. House Bill 5019 allocated $1.9 million to create 30 emergency housing beds and rapidly rehouse 32 individuals who have never been housed previously in our area. And then what I'm hoping, because we've got all the right people at the table and everybody's motivated to make change, is that that group of people will move forward and become the local planning group for Lynn County. So how does that fit with what else is happening in the Tri-County region? Right now, Benton and Lincoln counties also have funding from House Bill 4123 for 2 years. They each got $1 million for their county to create a plan and a strategy to address homelessness in their community. And then they have pilot funding to move forward under House Bill 5019, just like we got, to rehouse a certain number of people and create a certain number of shelter beds. Again, all the right people at the table. CSC is participating in a lot of that effort. Crossroads Communities is actively engaged in all of this work. I'm hoping that the same people will continue on as the continuum of care if we are able to do our own Tri-County continuum. This little map that I gave you, I know it's blurry, but the point is this is a map that was created by the consultant for Lincoln County. The consultant actually went out and was able to, with that House Bill 4123 money, interview all the faith-based organizations, all the police departments, the libraries, the hospitals, anybody who touched clients who were homeless, and say, what are you doing and how are you doing it and how are you connected to other folks who are doing this work? And map that. And what we learned from that is kind of what we already knew. Tons of people are talking to folks, tons of people are doing work, but not all the data is being collected and documented to give us good analytics. And so that's what having our own Tri-County continuum will enable us to have the opportunity to do, so we can make some really good decisions about how not to misuse resources, to make sure that we're targeting resources where they're going to be most effective and to have the most efficiency from those resources. This is just a little map that shows what everybody's doing as it comes to homelessness, street outreach, navigation, housing placement, a spectrum of different types of housing. And then, of course, whenever you get money, as you all know, it always comes with the responsibility to gather data and do reporting. So here's the gamut of things that are being done with the funding that we have and the work that we'll continue doing. It used to be that there was no process to pull out of a balance of state continuum of care. And Marion and Polk counties were the first counties to do it. HUD hired a technical assistance provider for the Portland HUD field office and a technical assistance provider for Marion and Polk counties. And they have been incredibly generous. They've given us a real roadmap for how we do this. So the first thing that we had to do was hold a stakeholder meeting, which that happened in July in Corvallis for members of the folks who are working on this effort in the Tri-County region. They voted unanimously. They want to pull out of the rural Oregon continuum of care. Now I'm making the rounds to every city council in each of the 3 counties, asking for your support, encouraging you to come along on this journey with us and support this effort. Your resolution, as I mentioned, is later on your agenda. I'll be asking for letters of support from all of the partners who are doing this work in the Tri-County region. And then each of those local planning groups in Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln counties will have a formal vote to pull out of the rock. And here's a few more things that I'll need to put together in a packet. And then that has to be delivered to HUD, because HUD has to understand that it's okay with our community for us to do this, that I didn't just wake up yesterday and say, I'm going to go out on my own and do this, that I have broad support across the Tri-County region. So that is the story in a nutshell, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments from council?
Well, I know you're more details. I'm kind of a 10,000-foot guy. What are the drawbacks or pluses? I mean, other than more, I would imagine more money appropriated to us. If this goes through, what happens? What looks different than it does today?
Great question. You know, it's not all about the money, but it's always about the money. And so one of the things that will happen is it will have much greater control over what we can apply for. So for example, a couple of years ago, Jackson Street Youth Services wanted to expand some homeless and runaway youth programs. And they went to the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care leadership and they said, hey, we want to apply for this funding. It's a national funding competition, lots of money. And they would have been really likely candidates to win to get the money because they're very competitive in what they do and they do a good job. And the Rural Oregon Continuum of Care voted on it. And because all of the rest of the Eastern Oregon counties didn't want to stand up homeless and runaway and homeless youth programs, they said, sorry, Jackson Street, we're not going to allow you to go forward for the funding. So it gives us more control to be able to do things like that. And with our Tri-County region, it gives us a little bit more control to say, hey, we think that this kind of process will work better, different policies, different vulnerability assessment tools, different data management processes, that is what makes more sense for us rather than this giant tri-county or giant 26 county continuum. The drawback is that we'll have to support this ourselves. Like I mentioned, CSC is already doing quite a bit of the work. And I'll be advocating at the legislature to get more stable funding for continuums across the entire state, to get support to operate their continuums. Because like I said, the governor has been very clear she's going to be sending money through that system. And everybody's kind of in the same boat. There is no dedicated funding for that.
Thank you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you.
I have a question. Aside from the administrative costs, when we're talking about with this money, is it purely housing we're talking about for people that need houses, or is there more services provided than that?
Yeah, great question. There's an array of things that you can use the funding for, and it changes all the time. So it really is, like I said, that entire spectrum from keeping people housed, keeping them from falling into homelessness. So with things like rental assistance and all the way through getting people rehoused, providing supportive services. We currently have some funding for permanent supportive housing, which, as you've probably heard about from some of your colleagues here, that is really providing robust services that keep people who otherwise wouldn't be able to stay in their housing housed, rent subsidies, that type of thing. And it goes all the way through to affordable housing development.
And if this tri-county group is formed, you mentioned that CSC would be an option for managing it. Would there be a cost for the city of Lebanon, or would you guys be using the money that's coming in to pay the administrative costs?
So for the moment, our plan is to use the money that's coming in. I don't know what it looks like going forward. As I mentioned, we currently have funding for the things that we're already doing that we would continue doing. I'm guessing that at some point, the group may decide they want to form a 501c3 or something and move forward. I don't know what that will look like. Or maybe not. They may say they don't want to do that. But I'm unclear at this moment. What has happened with Marion and Polk County is that they made it, and again, all of the members are the ones who created this. Nobody told them they had to do it this way. They decided that they would have donations from different municipalities in their region, and those municipalities would be the voting members, that everybody could come to the table, everybody could have an opinion, everybody could participate in the conversation, but the final decision makers would be the ones that were contributing to the support of the overarching administration of their continuum. We could do it that way. We don't have to do it that way.
What type of administration, what would that look out for just an estimate, the three counties combined, how many people would need to be manage this group?
So we have talked internally about it, and we think it's reasonable to think 3 people. We've got 2 people working on it right now. We're going to add a 3rd person, and we'll see how that goes. It also will depend on the continuation of these local planning groups. So like the MAC group for Lynn County, the multi-agency coordinating group, and like how that money continues to come in for that group and what level of responsibility that local planning group takes, and then how much is put on the people who are administering the overarching piece. One of the big activities that has to happen every year, well, it doesn't have to happen, I guess, if you don't want to keep applying, but if you want to keep applying for funding, you have to have a collaborative applicant. And so that collaborative applicant then has to manage that process of getting all the applications from all the different partners who want to apply, coordinating a team that does rating and ranking and evaluates the proposals and decides which of those proposals then are going to go forward to HUD for that national competition. And that's a pretty heavy lift. So we'll see how it all goes. There could have to be additional people beyond the 2 or 3, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Right now, Marion and Polk have 2 people. They decided they needed a 3rd.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from council?
I will just say that we've worked with CSC quite a bit. In fact, they were able to fund our warming center here for a couple of years. And my executive director works with Peggy and her crew extensively. I even snaked one of her retired employees for my board. Thank you, by the way. This is something that's been in the works for a while, and it really came to light when those measures came down from the governor and they formed the MAC group, and it was obvious immediately that that was overly large and they had to restrict some of us. I still get the emails.
But Michael represents you.
But Michael does that. But it's very frustrating when you're trying to do these programs and you're competing with basically an absentee landlord of the Rock with 25 other counties, and you're already at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to these kind of funding issues. So being able to consolidate and represent a local group only makes sense, both financially and esoterically, I guess would be the right way to say it. CSC's been working the Tri-County area already for years. It's not unknown ground for them. They're very effective, but they, like all the rest of us, run into shortages. And when you can't access the fundage because you've got someone up there choking it down. I just had a gal yesterday trying to get help with paying a power bill. And she had contacted CSC and there's just no funds there for it. That's a program a lot of people really depend on, but we can't go out and ask for that without going through the rock. It just makes sense to do this ourselves. And that's essentially what we'd be doing.
Thank you so much, KJ. I'll
Well-
just also say, you know, the balance, so it's a balance of state continuum is what the rock is. And HUD keeps saying, well, we don't understand why you guys aren't performing better. And we're like, are you kidding me? A balance of state? And they're like, we have plenty of balance of state continuums that do well. And I'm like, well, who? Who? Well, Connecticut. And I said, my service delivery area alone is the size of the state of Connecticut. Do you people in Washington, DC even know what Oregon looks like? But apparently not.
And they have to be explained. There is no E on the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Welcome to the Willamette Valley.
yeah, right.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for coming in and bringing this to us.
Yeah, thank you all so much. I do have one quick question. Do you want me to stay until you discuss the resolution, or are you good, or?
I'm good.
I will leave it up to you.
Okay,
I'm not sure if we need to have you or not, to be honest with you. Maybe we should err on the side of safety and have you stay.
sure, happy to do
So-
that. I also forgot to mention that Eric Anderson from Lynn County had given me some data to include just specific to the MAC group, just to give you an update and just to make you aware of what's going on and what we're doing there. And again, I know that you have KJ and others who have been actively engaged in this, so you may already know this, but just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We'll move into public hearings. First on the docket tonight is annexation of 155 Taylor Street. Public hearing regarding this annexation is open at 6:37. Will the city attorney please read the hearing procedures?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight's hearing will be pursuant to the quasi-judicial procedures set out in ORS 197.797. At the start of the hearing, council members will be asked to disclose any ex parte contact, conflicts, or bias. The applicable substantive criteria for this hearing will be addressed in the staff report to council by Ms. Hart. Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the land use, city's land use regulations. Any issue raised must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient to allow the the council and the party members an opportunity to respond. Please note the failure to raise an issue, including a constitutional issue, by the close of the hearing will prevent any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. That you can ask for conflicts of interest, ex parte contact, or bias.
Do any counselors wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict, or bias? Is there anyone in the audience that objects to the notice that was sent in the case or to the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider this case? Will the Community Development Director please present your report?
Yes, sir. Before you tonight is a proposed annexation of a 0.33 acre property, which is situated between Russell Drive to the north and Taylor Street to the south. And it's generally on the mid-block portion between Willow Street and Primrose. The property is located within the city's urban growth boundary. It's adjacent to and contiguous to city boundaries along the northern boundary line. And is currently designated within the comprehensive plan as residential mixed density. The applicant is accepting of the residential mixed density designation for zoning upon annexation. And so as there's also utilities located and available in Russell Drive for connection to the property. So as the property is contiguous to city boundaries, the initial zoning is being accepted without change, and it can be served by city utilities. The property is eligible for annexation. At the September 20th meeting, the Lebanon Planning Commission unanimously voted to recommend approval of the annexation to the city council. So before you tonight is the recommendation to approve the annexation and assign the residential mixed density zoning for 155 Taylor Street.
Does council have any questions of staff? Would the applicant like to give testimony?
Good evening, Laura Rock with Udell Engineering, and I do not have anything to add to Kelly's presentation. She did a great job, but I am available for questions if the council has any.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody like to speak in opposition? Public hearing is hereby closed at 6:40. All further discussions will be limited to council and staff at this time. Will the city attorney, sorry, got ahead of myself, or should you read it first? Doesn't matter. All further discussion limited to council and staff at this time, so. No comments? Okay. Will the city attorney please read the title of the ordinance?
A bill for an ordinance and annexing and zoning property following consent filed with the city council by landowners in said area pursuant to ORS 222.120 and ORS 222.170. Ordinance bill number 2023-14, ordinance number 3009.
Is there a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to annexation of 645 and 685 West B Street. And public hearing regarding this annexation will open at 6:42. Same public hearing procedures apply. Do any counselors wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict, or bias? Is there anybody in the audience that objects to the notice that was sent in this case or to the jurisdiction of this body to hear or consider this case?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
At the beginning of each hearing, I do have to read one small part.
Okay.
I know you're trying to avoid that, but.
No, I didn't. I wasn't. I will put it in my notes for down here.
So please note, same as last time, but it needs to be statute requires this to be on the record. Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the city's land use regulations. Any issue raised must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient to allow the council, party members, or the party members an opportunity to respond. Please note that failure to raise an issue, including constitutional issues, by the close of the hearing will prevent any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Okay. Do I need to reread the two questions? Okay. And will the Community Development Director please present her report? Thank you.
Sure. Before you tonight is an annexation of a 0.31 acre site, including two parcels on the north side of West B Street, west of South 7th Street. Addresses are 645 and 685 West B Street. The sites are contiguous to Lebanon city boundaries on the northern, eastern, and southern property lines. And designated in the comprehensive plan as residential mixed density. The applicant is accepting of the residential mixed density zoning designation, and as part of a development proposal on the south side of the street, utilities are proposed to be extended to the site, and so there is the site is able to be serviced by city utilities. So being contiguous, accepting of the zoning, and served by utilities, it's eligible for annexation, and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the annexation at their September 20th meeting. So before you tonight is that recommendation to approve and to designate the zoning as residential mixed density.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions of staff? Would the applicant like to give testimony? Does the council have any? Well, there's no applicant, so there is none. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favor of this annexation? Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition? I seen someone move. Is that a yes? No? Okay. The public hearing is hereby closed at 6:44. All further discussions will be limited to council and staff at this time. Any comments, questions, discussion? Okay. Will the city attorney please read the title of the ordinance?
A bill for an ordinance annexing and zoning property following consent filed with the city council by landowners in said area pursuant to ORS 222.120 and 222.170. Ordinance bill number 16, ordinance number 3011.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion to approve is passed. Move on to item number 4, annexation of 870 Walsum Street. Public hearing regarding this annexation is now open at 6:45. Again, the same public hearing procedures apply. However,
Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, of the land use regulations. Any issue raised must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient to allow the council and party members an opportunity to respond. Please note that failure to raise an issue, including constitutional issues, by the close of the hearing will prevent any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
is there any counselors that wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict, or bias? Is there anybody in the audience that objects to the notice that was sent in this case or to the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider this case? Again,
Here we go again. Proposed annexation of a 0.37 acre parcel on the south side of Walsum Street between Stoltz Hill Road and South 7th Street. Address is 870 Walsum. The property is located within the urban growth boundary and contiguous to city property or city boundary between the north, south, and eastern property lines. And the site is designated in the comprehensive plan as residential mixed density. And the applicant is accepting of the residential mixed density zoning upon annexation. There are already utilities fully within Walsum Street, and so being contiguous, being accepting of the initial zoning, and utilities are able to serve, the Planning Commission recommended the City Council approve the annexation at the September 20th meeting. And that is before you tonight is the requested annexation and the corresponding zoning of residential mixed density. I'm available to answer questions.
any questions of staff? Would the applicant like to give testimony?
Thank you. Laura LaRock with Udell Engineering, again, available for questions if the council has any.
No questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favor of this annexation? Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition? Public hearing is hereby closed at 6:48. All further discussion will be limited to the council and staff at this time. Nothing? Okay. Will the city attorney please read the title of the ordinance?
A bill for an ordinance annexing and zoning property following consent filed with the city council by landowners in said area. Ordinance bill number 2023-17, ordinance number 3012.
Is there a motion to approve?
Moved.
Second.
Motion to approve has been made. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion to approve has been passed. Move on to comprehensive plan map amendment and zone map. Public hearing for CPMA 23-02 and I'll do old military way here. Zulu Mike Alpha 2302 is now open at 6:49. Would you like to add anything?
Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan of the city's land use regulations. Any issues raised must be accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to allow the council or the party members an opportunity to respond. Please note that failure to raise an issue, including constitutional issues, by the close of the hearing will prevent any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Do any counselors wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict, or bias? Is anyone in the audience that objects to the notice that was sent in this case or the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider this case? Director Hart.
Hey, we have something different. So before you tonight's a proposed comprehensive plan map and zoning map amendments. This is for the property that is just to the north of the Walgreens on the east side of South Sandium Highway. The property owner recently divided the property to have a 1.33 acre parcel on the southern end of the property directly adjacent to the Walgreens, separated off. And the proposal is to take that 1.33 acres and change the comprehensive plan and zoning map designation from mixed use to highway commercial. The property is within the urban growth boundary. The property is along South Sandium Highway and has adjacency to a lighted intersection. So it is suitable for the highway commercial zoning. The intent and the purpose behind the requested change is to authorize a greater amount of commercial activity that is than what is authorized within the mixed use zone. And the applicant does currently have a different land use action proposal to develop the site for a commercial use that is pending the authorization for the comp plan and zoning map amendment. And so the Planning Commission considered this request to change the zoning from mixed use to highway commercial for just the 1.33 acre site at the September 20th meeting, and they identified that it met the decision criteria and recommended approval of this change to the city council. So before you tonight is the recommendation to amend the comprehensive plan map and zoning map to the comprehensive plan being commercial and the zoning being highway commercial. And there is a small typo in section 3 of the ordinance that refers to annexation rather than a comp plan map amendment boundary. And so we can fix that upon final decision. That concludes my report. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions of staff?
This is any kind of precedence that I don't understand. This is for just this spot. Doesn't allow, if somebody else came up with the same request, it'd have to go back through planning commission again.
Correct.
Is this the property that's planned for the Dairy Queen?
No, it's just to the south of the Dairy Queen. It's just to the south of the Dairy Queen.
Okay.
Ice cream cone and a car wash, all in the same place.
Any other questions of staff?
Uh,
Would the applicant like to give testimony?
Hello, I'm Raul Warner with CSA Planning in Medford, Oregon. Our offices are 4497 Brown Ridge Terrace in Medford. Here on behalf of the applicants in this matter. I don't have any additional testimony to add to Kelly. She did a good job explaining it. Again, our objective is to get a conditional use permit to construct a automated drive-through car wash next to the Walgreens. The buyers were looking at the property and sellers, they all thought car washes were allowed in the zone, and they started to proceed with the purchase agreement. Auto services generally are allowed in the zone, but the specific use car wash is not. So that is the purpose of the request.
All righty, thank you. Is there any questions of the applicant? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favor of this annexation
Zone amendment.
or zone amendment? Sorry. Anybody who would like to oppose? Public hearing is hereby closed at 6:53. All further discussions are limited to council and staff at this time. Will the city attorney please read the title of the ordinance?
A bill for an ordinance amending the Lebanon Comprehensive Plan Map and Zoning Map designation to establish the commercial highway commercial designation for the 1.33 acre property, part of as tax lot 100, ordinance bill number 18, ordinance number 3013.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion to approve has been passed. Thank you so much, sir. Move into regular session. Resolution to support the creation of a Lynn Benton and Lincoln County Consortium of Care, presented by Kelly Hart.
Good evening again. Before you tonight was a presentation from Peggy McGuire from Community Source. Let's try that again.
Could you repeat that?
From Community Services Consortium, the lead agency in the efforts to form the Lynn Benton and Lincoln Continuum of Care. As part of that presentation, it was the request to adopt a resolution of support for the formation of this continuum of care. And that is what is before you tonight. And so myself or Peggy McGuire is available to answer any questions.
Is there any questions of staff?
What exactly is the question before us?
The question before you is whether or not the city of Lebanon supports the creation of the continuum of care and to remove ourselves from the rural Oregon continuum of care.
I just wanted
And issue a letter of support.
The resolution is the letter of
Yeah.
support on behalf of Lebanon, but if we need an additional document, we can do that as well.
Any other questions? Will the city attorney please read the resolution?
Resolution of the City Council of the City of Lebanon, Oregon, in support of establishing a continuum of care for Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln Counties region and registering with the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development in 2024, resolution number 2023-16.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to 7, system development fees for accessory dwelling units, presented by Ron Whitlatch, interim city manager, and Kelly Hart, community development director. You're busy tonight, aren't you?
That'd be me. You guys
Okay.
are going to be really tired of me.
You're a star.
Okay, so back in August, Councilor Salvage asked us to consider the system development charges associated with accessory dwelling units. And so we have gone back, done some research, identified some options before to put before council to start the discussion. So we started with the staff report of what our existing condition is and how our accessory dwelling units are allowed to be developed. They are intended to be small accessory dwelling units to a primary residence. These are not identified to be large McMansions on a property. The accessory dwelling units per state law are not allowed we are not allowed to require parking for them. And so they have the lower parking allocation. And accessory dwelling units may or may not connect to city sewer and water services. They can have their own connection and their separate meters to become separate rentals, or they can be connected to the primary dwelling and maintain the singular meter and be metered off of that one bill. For our existing system development charges associated with accessory dwelling units, we do not have a standalone fee for ADUs. What we have done for some of the different system development charges is that we have scaled the charges based off of size of dwelling units. We currently charge 5 different system development charges for streets, parks, storm drainage, water, and sewer. Streets is the methodology in which it is scaled based off of the size of the unit, but the lowest scaled unit size is 1,450 square feet. So everything in between 0 and that is charged the same rate. And then it is tiered for higher units where higher square footage gets charged a larger amounts. For parks, it is a basic tiering of 2 different tiers, single family or multifamily. Currently, accessory dwelling units are charged at the single family dwelling rate. There is an easy amendment that council can choose where you can say that accessory dwelling units should be charged at the multifamily rate if you so chose. That would be a saving of $758. Storm drainage fees, these are incredibly low. It's $99 per every 1,000 square feet of new impervious surface. So if you were doing a garage conversion or you're converting a part of your single family home into an accessory dwelling unit, you're not charged a storm drainage fee. If you are adding new impervious surface, the largest ADU can be 1,000 square feet. So your largest fee is going to be $99 for that one. Water and sewer are both charged based off of the meter sizes. And so the smallest meter size that we have is the 5/8 to 3/4. And so if an ADU creates its own lateral, creates its own meter, they pay that fee. If they do not, they are not subject to the water or sewer fees. So currently, as our existing condition stands, system development charges for accessory dwelling units are at bottom minimum, $9,270. At maximum, with their own individual meters for water and sewer, it would be $17,252. There are some reduction options that we've looked at. We did a survey out to all of the cities in Oregon, and those that responded, we got some interesting options to put forward to you. So there's different ways that we can review this. Number one would be to assess system development charges for accessory dwelling units only when new square footage is being created. So that would be if you are building your own new structure. For garage conversions, this is not new square footage. Sorry, let me make sure I have my notes right. So new construction, garage conversions where livable square footage is being added, you are charged. But if you're converting your existing single family home where it's already livable space and you're converting part of that to its own separate ADU, that's not creation of new square footage of livable area. So you can identify that type of conversion is not subject to system development charges. But when you are creating new livable space, then you're subject to new system development charges. That would be either A, for that one type of ADU, you would have no fee. And B, for the other type of ADUs where you're creating the new livable area, you would maintain our same structures we have currently. Option number two is just to do a standard reduction for accessory dwelling units. We've seen this for other cities where they charge 1/2 the rate of a single family dwelling for their accessory dwelling units, regardless of whether it's attached, detached, or conversion of existing square footage. That 50% is not tied to any methodology whatsoever. And so when we were looking at this, we have identified that we have a maximum square footage allowance of accessory dwelling units to be 40% of the size of the single family home. And so that at least ties it to a methodology of sorts. And so consider doing a just flat reduction to where accessory dwelling units pay 40% of a single family home rate. That is option number two, and so that would be, again, you are still subject to paying water meter fees and sewer fees if you're creating your own lateral. And so if you are doing the reduction of the 40%, your fees would now be between $3,708 to $6,900. If you're doing the basic 50% of a single family home, it would be $4,600 to $8,600 approximately. You can also do system development charges based off the meter connection. So if a new meter is proposed for anything, then it's charged everything. If there is no new meter, then there's nothing. And that would be the fourth option. So there's also, so let's go through that really quick. You have the no change option, which has the 9,200 to about 17,000. You have assess SDCs when only new square footage is being built. You have established a standard reduction of 40% to tie it to our code, or what other cities are doing of 50%. and then establish it based off of utility connection, where it's either, if you're not doing any new utility connection, it's 0. If you are doing new utility connection, you're creating a new dwelling, you're subject to the full charge and the full fee. You can also develop a grant or waiver system for accessory dwelling units. Other cities have done it where every fiscal year, they say the first X number of ADUs that are applied for, we will waive our system development charges. That would be based off of general fund monies. We don't have another funding source to do that waiving of fees. We tried to look at some interesting options, but we were told we can't. So general fund monies it is. The last option is you just choose to not charge system development charges for accessory dwelling units. So we've put together a table at the end of this staff report that sort of shows how you can make reductions. A lot of it is all or nothing. There are some middle ground options that you could look at. But this is what we've come up with as some basic options. There is one other thing that the city can consider is through Senate Bill 919 that was passed this year. We could do a tax exemption for accessory dwelling units. To do that, we would need to get all taxing agencies to agree to it, and it would be a 5-year period of a tax exemption, and then that would be brought back up to regular taxes as well. That is separate from system development charges, but is an option that can help alleviate some of the fee burden on ADUs. So options in front of you, tables to look at. Ron and I are able to answer any questions, and so it's up to council how you would like to proceed.
Kelly, I think it'd be helpful if you gave us a quick rundown of where these SDC fees go to, like what they go to and what they don't go to, for everyone who's listening, or
I think
Ron.
Ron would be great to answer that.
So system development charges go to, I'll just call it oversizing growth type things that you do in your community. Prime example, West Side Interceptor. It's a big trunk line. It's not associated with any particular neighborhood or particular development. It's to carry a majority of the city's sewer to the wastewater plant, right? Trunk line. Same thing would be said for an intersection that, say today, does not have a traffic signal at it, but as growth happens, in the future, you're going to have a traffic signal at that intersection. So street system development charges get put to that. It's mainly for growth and oversizing. And we've got a whole list of projects that happens with. Your wastewater plant, your water treatment plant, all those have system development charges associated with them that you can use it for. Does that kind of help?
And I guess for everyone listening, where does the money not go to?
So it does not go to do any improvements as far as capital maintenance. When I say capital maintenance, street overlays or water line replacements or sewer line replacements or lateral replacements. You really can't use it in park maintenance. It's more for developing parks. Drainage is the same way. It's solely intended to oversize your system. It's to catch the big stuff that you really can't condition on any one development and may not be needed at the time of development, but as the city grows, that's what it's used for.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just because I don't know, what's the volume of these? Do we get 5 of these made every month? Do we get 100 a year? What's
Are you
the math?
referring to SDC?
No,
or,
to a
ADUs?
accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, yeah.
I think right now we don't get many. We do get inquiries, probably about once a week, about building them. Actually getting to fruition of constructing them, we get less than a handful a year of what we're looking at. Part of the reason why we don't end up seeing as many is because of SDC fees. At least that's what we've heard directly from the public. And then also, the way that some properties, they don't have the size or capability to build one. And so it's not suitable for every single property to develop one. So we don't get as many as we could.
I get it. Just want to know the scale, kind of.
Yeah, it's not much right now.
Right.
Any other questions of staff?
I guess I have one more question, and looking at the options, I'm kind of leaning between I like the 40% of the single-family dwelling. I think it ties it to something in our existing code. It reduces it significantly. But I also like the part where we're assessing SDCs for ADUs when you only create new square footage. I wonder if there's a hybrid option where if you're not creating square footage, you could have the no fee that's an option, but when you are adding square footage, you could do the 40%. Is that even an option we can consider?
The options are endless.
Okay.
It is truly a council policy decision. It is not tied to any methodology, but it's also not a significant number of applicants that we are getting for this. So it's truly policy. If we start to see a mass influx of it, we will come back to council and let you know that we're seeing a mass influx. And if you want to reconsider or tie it to a more specific methodology. But at this point in time, and until there's a problem, it's really council's decision how you want to move forward.
And we didn't tie this to a methodology change. I think we're trying to avoid that. So we're not going back through all of our system development programs and coming up with new methodology for this. So you don't see any real true methodology to this. There's no, trips generated or anything associated with that. This is strictly just a percentage basis that you guys can do as a policy. We can implement that. More than happy to do so. I don't see a lot of risk in doing any of these just based on what we see today. Obviously, if we start getting 100 of these a year or 150, we're probably going to come back and say, hey, we probably need to relook at this or create some methodology to it.
Yeah. Yeah. On one hand, I want to make it affordable for people to be able to do an ADU on their property. I also don't want everybody in town to convert their garage tomorrow.
Agreed.
But I don't see that happening with, I don't see that happening, but like you said, if that is something that is occurring, then we can revisit this.
Yeah, and we would have to revisit it. I mean, if you jumped into a situation where everybody's creating an ADU on their property, obviously you're going to have some impacts on your water and sewer and transportation systems. And at that point, we would say, hey, you probably should relook at this and reevaluate.
Well, what, do you guys have any other thoughts on the different options that
I
are?
kind of like the 40%.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'm leaning towards being more cautious and doing 50, just because we don't know what we don't know. We could wind up with a bunch, and I don't know. I'm happy with what I am not passionate about this, but I think a 50% reduction is pretty big already.
Well, I
take
feel
it down
like
to
for
40.
some of it, if it's so small, that's so few, and we double it, and all of a sudden there's 20 instead of 10, that's not a big strain on anything, and it still generates income.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you take the 3 or 4 that we do now, and even if you tripled it, right, we're still not seeing a lot of impact on the system itself.
Right.
And we're likely losing out on some of that because it's just too expensive.
Yeah, potentially. I don't see a lot of risk in what you're doing here in terms of funding for the future. Obviously, if we start getting into something, like I said, we would be back at this table having this a different discussion.
By making this change, we're just making it a little bit easier for someone that maybe wants to do a multi-generational property.
Sure.
To put in an ADU without it costing them an arm and a leg just on SDCs.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk a lot about, affordable housing, and
Yeah.
this would be an easy way to somewhat incentivize that, or at least make it possible for people to do that at their house.
And then at some point, we can have a discussion about SDCs on tiny homes.
Wow.
Well, this would certainly count towards our housing production strategy too.
Yeah.
The reduction of STCs, so
Yep.
that's solid too.
Well, I think my vote would be option, I believe it's 3, the 40% of the single family dwelling.
I'm fine with that.
I'd be good with that.
Yep.
Okay. We can bring something back at the November meeting for you to,
Next up would be a resolution to adopt the new fee structure, and we'll get that in November.
There you go.
So if there's no other questions or comments, we'll move on to RV parks. Again, Director Hart.
It's the last one, I think. I hope.
Don't leave.
Oh, no, the chief said you could do his too.
I'm going to punt to you. You're doing such a good job.
Thanks, man. So this is a bit of a cleanup item. It's just to clear the record. So in 2018, we had a property owner come in and request to do a recreational vehicle park in the city. That's, I guess, a KOA park where you can have RVs come in for temporary stays, sort of thing, like an RV campground. At that time in 2018, the staff that was here reviewed the development code and evaluated it and determined that the city had only authorized publicly owned RV parks. The property owner at that time requested that staff presented to council to see if council would like to consider to allow for privately owned RV parks. At the council meeting that occurred in, I think it was September of 2018, the evaluation of the development code was presented, where it was evaluated that it was only allowing for publicly owned RV parks. And the question was asked to council about whether or not they would like to consider allowing for privately owned RV parks. The discussion at that time revolved around some concerns about the issue of fire safety, property maintenance, issues over time, demands on code enforcement, and tenancy issues of people not leaving the park when they need to, which puts a strain on our police services. So based off of those concerns, the direction from council at the time was to not pursue a code amendment. And so the perceived direction was that RV parks were authorized in the city, but only as publicly owned RV parks, and privately owned RV parks are not permitted. Recently, we had another property owner come in and ask the question to us. Upon review of the code, I provided in the staff reports an evaluation that demonstrates that RV parks are indeed actually permitted, or there is a path to being permitted as privately owned in our city in the highway commercial zone. It is identified in our land use categories in section 1603 as a class 3 impact commercial use. It is also identified as a class 2 public use. And so the interpretation of that is that if you are operating a publicly owned RV park, you are categorized as a class 2 public use and subject to the permitting system that way. If you are proposing to operate a privately owned commercial RV park, you are a class 3 commercial impact subject to the zones and permitting system as a class 3 commercial impact. As it stands, what that means is that recreational vehicle parks as privately owned commercial ventures are authorized as a conditional use within the highway commercial zone. And so we wanted to bring this forward to you to clear the record, as it has been recently requested, and identify if council has any comments or alternative direction to us.
I think all the negatives that were there the first place still are, in my opinion. I'm not for a private, with what's going on in our climate right now, a private RV park sounds like it would cause all those problems that were listed before to me.
Yeah, firsthand experience working in Salem, there's some privately owned RV parks that it's a bad situation. And I would, on one hand, I would love to let people put an RV park on their private property, but I've seen where that goes after 10, 15, 20 years, and it's not pretty right now.
Yeah, the change in the current environment with we deal with the RV issue all the time out on the streets. And, you know, 1965, people owned them and they had a little fishery and, you know, they were great back then, but right now it just seems, it's almost like you can see the writing on the wall, what would happen after 10 years, 15 years. Owner gets tired of running it or passes away and then they sell it to whoever, or a family member takes it over and really has no vested interest in it when it comes to finances. So they're just using it as a passive income type thing. So I don't know if I'm for private RV parks at all. Especially nowadays, it just seems like they would turn into a disaster, but I'm not always right. So,
What?
yeah. But I think I have a pretty good gauge on kind of seeing where things go because it's just experience. So, you know.
I tend to agree that I'm not in favor of that. We've got kind of somewhat of an example of that already in town.
Yeah.
Behind the big building across from the Legion. That being said, doesn't mean that a private place will go that way, but there's more of a tendency without public oversight.
I think without piling on some of these points that have been made, I appreciated this one in the report, which was, one city did not allow private parks as there's little assessed value and tax revenue, yet there are obviously pretty significant increased demands likely for our police department, library, park services. Coming at it from that angle, I agree with whoever said this in the report, but again, we're coming back to risk versus reward. So I'm a no.
So I think you probably kind of got your answer with all those responses, I would imagine, that we're not really for it. Is that correct?
That is.
Which
the
means we
answer.
have to amend the plan,
Yeah.
kinda, right?
So yeah, I think it sounds like we would all be in favor of amending
Yes.
our plan to prohibit them in the city limits.
Yes.
So is that the direction of council for us to pursue an amendment to the development code and bring it back for consideration to eliminate privately owned?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
Well,
that's where we're all at.
I will
Yes.
work with our city attorney to put something together.
Apparently there's something else that's been,
I like to drag you into things every once in a while.
apparently there's
You guys are
something
earning your
else, a
money
sidebar
tonight, aren't
somewhere
you?
that we're not aware of.
Be quiet too long, Trey, so.
Did you have any comment on this?
Never been told that before.
No, okay. I guess the only question is, he brought up brought up one that's in town. I take it that'd be grandfathered in?
Yeah.
I don't know of the one in
The-
town.
Well, I think.
Yeah, there's one in town. It's
on
by downtown.
Vine-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vine Street.
Yeah.
And
Oh, Vine
Yeah.
in Maine.
I think maybe the differentiation is, and that
Park
is,
in Maine.
they live there. And an RV park to me seems like you're renting it for a week and
Yeah, good point.
you have to leave.
But RV parks.
necessarily.
end
And it would
up
turn
where
into-
people-
it would turn
people end
into
up
what-
living there anyway.
Yeah.
So for clarification too, per state law since 2018, recreational vehicles are allowed to reside full-time, extended however long they want to within manufactured home parks. So you can apply for a manufactured home park that has all recreational vehicles. And that is an authorized use. It's the use of a recreational vehicle park where it's a camping type temporary stay is the differentiation. And so we'll be bringing back the ordinance changes associated with that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments of staff? We'll move on to number 9, the update on the protection from the elements, time, place, and manner. Chief?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, City Council. What we have here before you is the update. We were talked about after June 28th, after enacting the time, place, and manner. Kind of what we did as a police department from the get-go is try to be a little bit proactive in our approach in rolling this out. What we did is developed a pamphlet as well as two pamphlets really, one with a whole bunch of resources in it, and the other one was explaining the whole time, place, and manner where individuals can go and sleep to keep out of the elements. Of those two locations, obviously we're in front of the Justice Center and over on Oak Street, kind of over by Public Works. Kind of during our first rollout phase, or not first rollout, but during the phase when we were rolling it out, we did contact several individuals, I think approximately 61. Some of those were repeats, and we were offering them, resources that where they could go to, as well as the whole place to go and sleep. So what we found is, since enacting the time, place, and manner, it has given us the tools necessary to, upon when we do get a complaint, to go contact that individual and either move them along or advise them where they can go. Most times than not, individuals just simply pick up and move. We have had the place on Oak Street that was used, I said 3 times in the report here, but it was just used for a 4th time the other night. So first couple times it was used, a lot of trash was left behind. Public Works had to address that issue. And when I say trash, I'm also including human feces. So that had to be addressed during that time. But those were 2 out of the 3 times. 3rd time and the 4th time it was used with really no issues. So, looking at it from the perspective of what to do when the police department gets a complaint of individuals illegally sleeping or camping in a place or in a location where they shouldn't be, what this has done is given us the tools, the tool necessary to go make that contact and address that issue. I'm happy to answer any questions. That was kind of short and sweet.
So the people that have used the Oak Street spot, is it the same or is it different people all the time?
It was the same individuals. The first 2 times, it was somebody else. The 3rd time, 2 different people. So I think there's 4 different people who have used it.
And no one's used the site down by you?
No one has used the Justice Center site.
That's insulting.
That's interesting.
Well, there was someone that used it. The reporters from the Albany Democrat Herald stayed on your lawn and they ran into 3 cats.
Yeah.
So
So
what-
my recommendation, it is working. And I feel that, I don't really see to change it to just one simple location. I think the 2 locations that we have, although it's not the most perfect scenario, but it is the 2 locations that we have, and it is working.
Any questions, comments?
Mm-mm.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Move on to approval to award old water treatment plant demolition. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. We actually finally got to open bids for demolition of the water treatment plant. It's taken us a long time to get here. We opened bids yesterday for it. We had a total of 4 bids. You can see from the breakdown there. Staten Companies was the lowest responsive bidder at $436,000. You see our engineer's estimate at $1,047,000. That was just a complete guess. Good news is we're way under that. So that money will be used for water line replacement in the future. With that, we're requesting City Council motion to award the water treatment plant and site rehabilitation project to Stanton Companies of Eugene, Oregon on October 16th, 2023, barring any unresolved protest of the bids. I don't foresee any, but we wait 3 days, and unfortunately we couldn't open this any sooner, so that's why the October 16th date, and I don't foresee any protest at this point. With that, I can answer any questions.
I only have one question, really. How is their bid so much lower than what your estimate is.
Oh, our estimate
Was
was,
that just really a swag?
yeah, it was a complete guess. This
Okay.
isn't the type of work we do. We put enough money at this thing to where we could get it on the ground, is basically what we
Okay.
said during budget season. It's like, I have no idea. You could guess at it, but,
Which is what we did.
which is exactly what we did.
Okay.
So,
Way to overestimate.
yeah, yeah.
I like you saving us money. That's okay. I'm good.
Well, I know that company,
That's
that's
what they
all
do.
they. I don't know about the other ones here.
They're mostly all demolition companies.
Okay.
Elder Demolition was, they were originally 770,000, but they did some math wrong and,
And the demolition will be the existing buildings on the property.
yep.
And you were saying the other day when we discussed this, that it's 3 foot down.
So
grade-
we're
below
taking
grade.
everything 3 foot below existing grade out there and we're backfilling. We're not gonna take it any deeper than that. There's pipes in there that we're gonna abandon and fill. We've already got a lot of our sewer moved in there, services. It'll be pretty much a clean slate for us to use, in the future. I don't know that there's any hard plans for it. I think right now it's just
How
let's
much is-
get it on the ground.
How big is that property?
Oh, I should know that off the top of my head, but I don't. It's not huge.
An acre,
Less
2
than
acres?
2,
Oh, no,
Yeah,
I don't think that
it's-
much.
I don't remember what the total,
less than 2 acres.
yeah, it's not all that big.
Yeah, we're not,
And our water shop is still housed over there, the metal building. That houses all of our meters and parts for the water crew and different pieces of pipe and whatnot. That'll stay for now.
good.
Any other questions of staff?
Hmm.
Is there a motion to approve?
I would move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to additional signage. Intersection of North Second and Mary Street. Ron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council again. This issue has been brought before the council several times. The latest was in September of this year. We had a citizen request of a four-way stop at the intersection of North Second and Mary Streets. Our staff has done studies, which I've attached to this, showing warrant analysis for a four-way stop. In all of those warrant analysis, which two were done, there was never really any of the warrants met. Other than, you could say, due to the large generational trees that are there that nobody wants to take out, they do create somewhat of a vision impact in the vision triangle. Not to say that we don't have that in other intersections in town, but that would be the one thing that you could go and request staff put a four-way stop in. And just to give you a little more background, the way the city municipal code reads is this body has does all of the directing in terms of traffic control when it comes to parking, no parking, signage in terms of stop signs and whatnot. So that's why I was asked the question, why didn't we just go with this in the first place? Well, we're going to go with our warrants. That's not to say that this body can't say, hey, you know what? We've looked at this and we think you should put a four-way stop up there. Good, great. All I'm going to give you is the facts, and that's what we did in those cases. And in this case, I think you're well within a bounds of putting the four-way stop just based on the tree issue. What we don't want to see is a precedent set where we're dealing with 2 or 3 of these at every council meeting where somebody wants a four-way stop, because typically people want them to slow motorists down, and that's really creates another host of problems. So that's why we go through this process and bring you that stuff. So with that, I can answer any questions, but we would recommend that you tell us to go put in some stop signs.
Let's put them in.
Second.
Okay, no questions of staff, so will the city attorney read the title of the resolution?
Resolution installing traffic control devices on Second Street at the intersection of Mary Street within the city of Lebanon, resolution number 2023-17.
Can you guys please do it again?
Said do it again.
Yeah.
Mo-
there-
Move for approval.
Okay.
A second.
Okay. Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion is passed. You can deploy stop
We
signs.
will deploy.
Okay, city manager's report. Ron?
Okay, I should be able to get through all 13 pages of this pretty quick. No, I won't do that to you. I've just got three things that I wanted to point out and of course, answer any questions that you may see through there. Annual Big Flush is October 30th through November 9th. So you will see our crews out flushing water lines. We do this annually to keep things flowing. Another thing I'd like to point out is the growth in ridership in our links. Kendra's projecting almost 60,000 rides this year. That's almost 15,000 more than last year. So something to keep in the back of your head, that program's working well. And then just kind of a quick update, we're working with Fire, Lynn County Sheriff's Department, School District. We're issuing daily maps to them for all of the construction that's going on Wyrick Road, Crowfoot Road, Cascade Drive, because we do have a mess down there. And that's been an interesting project down there. So with that, I'm available to answer any other questions you may have.
No questions? No comments? Okay. We'll move on to items from council. Is there any items from council that want to be brought up?
I'd like to bring up something real quick here. And I'd like to preface this by saying I'm just a citizen of this town that happens to be on city council. But last week on Tuesday or Wednesday, our city of Lebanon posted on its Facebook page an advertisement for the success of Measure 110. We've kind of covered this a little bit here, but it flouted that through Measure 110, we're building a new, better coordinated, locally driven system backed with resources to make treatment and other support available for more people. And then it cited increased percentages, which to me seemed like saying that drug crimes have gone down. Well, of course, that's not illegal anymore. Like I said, this is my personal feeling. Our citizens voted against Measure 110, and I don't think, this is an Oregon Health Authority message, but I think that putting this message out there sends the wrong message to our citizens. And that, like I said, that's my opinion. It's a personal opinion. I think that we kind of all know what 110 has done to our bigger cities and to us as far as homelessness and creating the mental illness and the addiction and the problems that they're kind of flouting that, yeah, we're doing more of this. Well, of course you are. You're creating more people. So I'd just like to bring that up.
Any other items from council?
I have a question. What power does this body have in controlling rent in this town? Can we do anything about it?
Well, the state kind of already does it at a certain level. Actually, Director Hart can address that question.
A rent control measure, and because of that state law, it specifically says that cities cannot institute any further rent control measures beyond what the state establishes.
Well, I have a problem with a mobile home park. Has new owners, and he's raised the price so far beyond what the people can afford. We suspect what he's going to do is to get everybody out of there and then put in apartments or some other kind of revenue. And the people in that, there's one lady, she cannot afford to move. She's trying to sell her mobile home and nobody's buying. So she's stuck, except that by January 1, she's going to be doubled on her rent.
I believe it's illegal right now in Oregon to raise the rent more than 7% plus the cost of living increase, which I'm not sure what that is this year, but it'd be illegal for someone to double rent right now unless the rent was, I don't know. It'd be illegal to double rent right now.
He's trying to.
Who's the agency in charge of regulating rent? Do we know? Kelly, maybe?
I would recommend anybody that's having issues to contact the Fair Housing Council.
Thank you.
And they can provide assistance and
It's in
services.
Salem.
Yeah, I think what he's gonna claim is since they own the land, or they own the building and he owns the land, it's not really renting a building to him, so that it won't apply, is what he's gonna try to say.
I think that, I
Property.
could be wrong, but
the
I think
property.
mobile home parks are still subject to, because they rent the spaces. I think that they're still subject to rent laws, but I can't.
Not with the
verify.
same percentages.
Yeah. But Fair Housing Council is
Yeah.
a great resource.
Any other items?
I just had a question. I don't know that I ever got an answer. When I was talking earlier, on our website page, we don't allow comments on Facebook, on the Facebook page.
Correct.
I've had several people, constituents come, want to know, why don't you want to hear from them?
It's not that we don't want to hear from them. It's that we have to keep that public record.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe, Julie, is that correct? And that's why we have turned the comment section off.
I know my employer in Albany is also a government agency, and they have turned off all comments on Facebook for the exact same reason. Those are subject to public records requests, and you have to hold those comments
Yeah, I understand. It's
forever.
just-
That's,
so,
I'm
But it also has to be
assuming that's
monitored. It
why.
has to, you know,
Yes.
there's
I mean, you can time place it. I mean, for what you can put on there, no vulgarity and threats and things like that can be removed, but
Probably the
I'm
best.
just getting a
Potentially.
lot of, when I say a lot, I've had 5 questions about it and I've never even asked it. I see our stuff all the time and quite honestly, I don't pay attention to, can I make a comment?
Well,
we would love to hear it from people, but just not in a comment on Facebook. That's what you can tell them.
Turn into
And
Lebanon
so
Buzz.
email to us, so we get a lot of email submissions, and that's what I would recommend to people that want to comment on our Facebook page or have questions about it.
Okay,
Send us an email, because we look at those every day.
Okay.
And those get
Good.
forwarded out to different directors and.
yeah, I honestly never noticed that we couldn't comment because I
You
don't
can like,
comment on
you can put a like
Facebook.
on them.
I,
You can like them. I think that's part of my concern with what I saw, because if you're telling somebody, this is what we think, and we're not gonna let you comment on it, I get all that public record stuff. And you don't want to turn it into the Lebanon Buzz kind of feel, which you know how that stuff works. But I think we should be careful what we put out there and maybe consider it a little closer, other than just saying, hey, the state of Oregon put it out there, so we will too. I'm not completely comfortable with that.
Yeah, and we can look at our policies for sure on that. I guess the big thing for staff is disseminating what, we're going to look at this from a professional lens, not how politicians would look at it. I don't mean to put you out there like that, but.
I've never been
but-
called
but
that
that's-
before.
That's how we're going to look at it. So we're going to look at things that come from the state, and we're going to look at it from a professional view, regardless of what of our opinion may be about said subject. And that's what we would post to it. Same thing if we've got press releases from ODOT or OHA or any of those. So we would need some serious guidance from council on what you want to see in terms of those kind of things that go out. The other thing that we can do is we can just take things that are relevant to the city and post only that. I mean, and that's an option. Other than traffic control stuff that we get from the state or from Lynn County. We can do that.
I guess there's a fine line, because to me, that's what I want to see on Lebanon's Facebook page. I want to see it's about Lebanon.
Yeah.
And if there was something that's of danger to the people of Lebanon, or something that
Like a
impacts us,
call to action, like, hey,
Yeah.
don't forget to enroll in
absolutely,
whatever
absolutely. But,
plan. Yeah.
but like that's not the only one they sent me. That just seemed,
And we can definitely look at that. If that's council's wish to just have us stick with stuff that's related strictly to Lebanon, I'm more than happy to, we can put something together like that. That's not a problem. But we look at it as, hey, this information came, regardless of what we think about said issue. We put it out there because we work for all of them. We work for everybody. And I understand your point, though.
I understand it too. I just think about the 49% that voted for psilocybin. They're going to want to see that 110 information. So
Yeah.
but I didn't mean
kinda
to
wait that-
kick over the anthill.
The majority
I just had
wins.
a question about the
I
comment.
I
thing.
think with the comments, I would have an issue with it too, but because the accessibility of this council,
Mhm.
you know, being able to get phone calls and emails and the accessibility of staff at City Hall.
Knocks at my door.
Yeah, so I don't see having the comments off as much as an issue as maybe some
No,
others.
it just, it was a
Because trust
question-
me, I get
question
calls all the
wanted to
time.
ask.
You know, so,
It's still the internet. There's going to be people who,
yeah.
Yeah,
internet people.
that's a hill we'll die on.
So any other items from council?
I ain't saying a word.
Okay. Public or press comments? Does anybody have anything to say?
Sullivan again. You all did the private RV parks. What about the out-of-town landlords on their apartment houses or local housing, et cetera? What are you gonna do about that?
Well, unless we strip people of property rights,
What we can do about that.
I don't know what we could do.
I don't know, to me, it's 6 one, half a dozen other. And you was talking about public trying to get a hold of you. I was a building official and I had an unlisted number. So,
But you, sir, you probably had an office that, or a number,
I don't
office
know.
number that they could reach.
anyway, on the water demolition of the building, are they going to take the tanks out too, or just the building?
We're taking it all down, everything.
Tanks and all?
Yeah, there's just, you're talking about the big accelerator out there? Yeah, yeah, that'll
Okay,
come down.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Press? Okay. Next scheduled council meeting will be November 8th, 2023, regular meeting at 6 o'clock. Right after we convene this, or adjourn this regular session, we're going to move into executive session. We'll take a 10-minute break, but if we can speed that up, appreciate it. So regular session is adjourned.